Thanks for tuning into the Pre-Patch Podcast. Check out these patch notes.
Bill has been playing a little bit
Yeah.
of the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, not remake, Rebirth. Yeah.
Yeah, I played Remake and now we're into Rebirth, which is the
Rebirth.
newest of the series to come out with Cloud and Tifa and Aerith and all the gang, and it's been fun. It's been a decent time. What we're going to be showing on screen, if you're watching live or in post video, is going to be spoiler free. It's just open world stuff. So open world stuff from the first area. So no story beats are going to be shown or talked about. But it's been a treat so far. And I'm glad that I did things the way that I did, playing Remake and then going directly into Rebirth, because it did the best job for me. Because Remake came out, what, 5 years ago? Final Fantasy VII
Well, because
Remake?
they had remake and they had integrate, right? Or
Intergrade was
Integrad.
like an update. It was like the PS5 update that added the Yuffie DLC, but it wasn't a different game.
So okay.
The 4 years ago. So so if you played this back with like Remake back whenever it first came out and then didn't touch it until Rebirth, it might be a little bit jarring, I guess. They did make a lot of quality of life changes. Your characters aren't going to control exactly how they did in Remake. They're still familiar, but with quality of life and like move set changes that kind of lend themselves more to a faster paced combat style. I guess one of the critiques that people had for Remake is that it was too slowed down for some people's taste as far as an action RPG goes, like a live action like fighting game RPG goes.
Yeah.
But
Going on with the come on, you the YouTubes. If it's not our
Yeah,
stream,
you-
it's YouTube being weird. All right, there you go.
yeah, but they sped it up, and it's honestly more of a I don't want to say DMC style fighting system, but it has kind of a feel like that to it. They added juggling to the game where you can launch enemies and you can juggle them in the air. Not quite as DMC as Final Fantasy 16 did, but it's a pretty decent blend now. If you had any issues with the speed of Remake, this is going to be a very big breath of fresh air. And going from that speed to kind of min-maxing with your spells and stuff, it all feels very good.
So I've heard like this is gonna be a spoiler for you, right? But I've heard good and I've heard bad. Where I've heard bad is really around like okay, I hear I'm like all I hear is like good until the end. And then I hear and I'm not gonna say what it is, but then I hear like a motherfucker. Like I just hear like this kind
A
of
cacophony of reeds.
yeah, it goes from like
Yeah.
being what I think would be a 10. Like I think a lot of people were saying like, hey, this is like a 9-10 to like at the end being like a 8. Right. I don't think 7 goes. I don't think that's fair, but being like an 8.
I feel like, and I don't know what happens with the story arc in this game because Remake kind of set it up so that anything could potentially happen in this. But knowing that this is the middle leg of a trilogy that they're setting up, middle legs of trilogies tend to be the least liked of trilogies. This is both in film, this is in video gaming. That secondary game tends to be where people have the most issue because it's not something fresh, new, and exciting like one was that gets people like really pumped up and ready to go. And it's also not giving any kind of closure. It's just setting up more and more cliffhangers, more and more plot points. It doesn't really answer anything that wanted to be answered from the beginning, like what a third game does. So if people are having issues with the end of the game, I'm assuming it's just because of the nature of a third game setup.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. I'm only 12-ish hours into the game. Still in the first open world area in that 12 hours, by the way. So,
Are you trying to 100% it?
I'm not going out of my way to 100% it, but as of right now, the game has my interest and my entertainment enough that I have been bounced. I'll probably end up 100%ing this first area just because I want to, not because I'm like trying to get the check mark. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, that is one of the areas too that I have heard of being like, you know, Far Cry is known for having like I think it was Far Cry 5 or something like that was known for having just like an absolutely asinine amount of like side quests and things on the map and shit
Yeah.
like that. And I have heard that this is like worse than Far Cry. Have you found that to be true, or is that like a
Wow.
personal preference? Like people are saying that like literally it like just dots the fucking map with so much shit
It,
to go
it
get done.
does. And honestly, it's you know how you get all those dots on the maps then?
Don't by skipping the story? No.
You go to a tower, and the tower unlocks all the
Oh,
dots on the
Oh,
map.
so they really
they
took
went to
a
Ubisoft.
they went straight
They went-
Ubisoft rail.
They went
Wow.
full Ubisoft with
Wow.
it, which I will give them credit. So this might be a controversial take. The open world aspect of the game is, as of right now, my least
I've heard that.
favorite part of the game.
Really?
For several different reasons. If you're watching live or watching in post, I don't know if you're kind of paying attention to how like the movement and the traversal is with the like environment, but it's awkward.
Yeah.
There's no jump button in the game, so anything that you go to like mantle over, it like almost
What?
feels
I
like
don't
it puts you into a mini cutscene for every mantle, every jump down, and stuff like that.
That's
So
that's annoying. Yeah,
it's
that's annoying
very
in any
clunky.
game.
Yeah, it's very clunky
Is
as
this
far as the traversal goes.
is this not the same like studio that's doing like 16 and stuff?
No, different
Okay.
different business division of
I got you.
Final Fantasy. I think 16 was Business Division 2. This is Business Division 1.
Because 16, I've heard 16's like traversal and like movement and everything like that is actually relatively pretty smooth. Like people quite enjoy
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah. And honestly, Final Fantasy 15, I feel like did open world traversal
Yeah.
better than what this does. Final Fantasy 15 was a lot more empty on the open world front. This game has the opposite problem where there's too much
Yeah.
stuff.
well,
But
and honestly, like that might be like a little bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Like, so when in recreating this so that they could have it as like an over the shoulder style thing, the original like map and everything like that, the original tactics I don't think had a lot going on, so maybe they just overburdened the maps just to make sure.
yeah,
that,
the
like,
original map was just the top-down random encounters as
Yeah.
you walk through the field. So, they very well might have traversal. Probably my biggest gripe, and even then, that's kind of a nitpick. It doesn't break my immersion. It's just annoying.
Yeah.
2, the Ubisoft towers. It's fine. I don't mind doing it now that I know that that's how they're distributing their side quests and their like
to be
their map
completely
events.
honest, like I really don't mind like the Far Cry,
I don't either.
like the way that they handle that kind of stuff, but I can see where people can get like a
Well,
little pissed off about it being just like constant, because that is one thing with like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed and everything like that, is like it's just constant. They're just one more thing you got to go and fucking look at. One more thing, one more, enemy camp that you got to clear. Oh shit, I just cleared that camp. There's another one 5 feet away.
Well, the,
Yeah.
the big complaint that people that I'm seeing and have talked to about is it's not necessarily just that there's a flood of shit to do, but it's also that it's medial. Like it doesn't feel impactful or.
Well, and again,
You know.
I think that's a bit of a I can't remember. There's a specific term for it, but it's basically like they overloaded the area because they felt like there wasn't enough there, and in doing that, they overdid it essentially. There's too much now, whereas before there was too little.
It's the
They're
old adage
overcompensating,
that if you
essentially.
give people too many options, it actually
Exactly,
lowers
yeah.
satisfaction.
There's I wish I could remember it, because they brought it up in with Starfield, right? There's like a specific like terminology in gaming where it's like there's a specific time between events that like game developers want to like hit at, and that's probably what they were trying to go for, but they overdid it.
Yeah.
Like there's a specific like amount of like seconds that you need to go, that like players need to go between before they see
Like a
something
palate
new.
cleanser.
Yeah, kind of. It's just it's to keep attention. Like let's be real. Gamers' attention spans are lessening and lessening with every year that goes by. Like,
Feature creep.
yeah, so it's one of those things where I'm curious if that's a little bit to do with it, and
could
like I
be.
said, maybe they're just overcompensating for a lack of content that was already there.
Well,
Yeah, I think that's more so than anything. They wanted to populate the overworld. The overworld didn't have those kinds of side quests
For
in the
sure,
original,
yeah.
so they wanted to make it. Plus, it still has the thing that Remake had, where they're trying to take a smaller section of a prior title and
larger
expand it
title,
out
yeah.
to its own game. So they
Let
have
me-
to fill it in somehow. And while people will call that fluff, if it's done in a fun and exciting way, I have no problem with filler content.
let me ask you this: do you
yeah.
feel that the content that you like, the side quest, is something necessary to, get to the level that you need to be able to beat a certain boss or move on? Because again, like this goes back to like my old school days of playing Final Fantasy, right? Or Final Fantasy
Yeah.
7 or 9, where it's like, oh, I'm not leveled high enough, I'm gonna just go and run around and over level myself by doing either side quest or just like beating the shit out of the same mob over and over and over again. Like,
Right.
is that
So
here or is that no?
There's two answers to that. As far as my playthrough of it goes so far, I haven't felt like I've over leveled myself with doing side quests and whatnot. But I also don't feel like any of the content has been too like hard. So I feel like the balancing is pretty good. The secondary part of that is they have a difficulty mode called dynamic difficulty, which takes that factor completely out of the equation. It basically does the Bethesda approach to leveling.
Yeah.
Yeah, where everything in the game levels to your character's level, so you're constantly going to be same level. It kind of takes some of the nuance out of encounters where you're not going to be able to run into a encounter that might be a bit higher level for you that you can like persevere through, or if you wanted to over level yourself, you're not going to be able to do that in dynamic mode, but that option is there if you just kind of want to not have to worry about the grind as much as just do what you want to do and push forward whenever you want to. So
That's good,
for
though.
people that want to play that way, that option is there.
At least they give the option for it.
Yeah. But back to the side quests and stuff. And my secondary problem with the open world, outside of the traversal, was before I realized, and this might have just been me not pushing through with the story content enough. Whenever they initially open you up into the open world, I saw the whole map. I was like, okay, we're gonna go start exploring, start doing side stuff like immediately. That was before I knew the Ubisoft towers were a thing, and this world was empty before I hit the Ubisoft tower. This is not a game where the events are pre-spawned, like you can like stumble upon a monster down on the shore side, fight it, and then go into the next town and be like, oh, there's this horrible monster that killed my husband. Can you go get it? And then you're like, yeah, I've already killed that monster. And they're like, great, thank you so much. It's you have to find this particular NPC that gives you the quest, and then the monster populates in that area. So that's a little bit annoying. I like a bit more organic feel to my quest structure. Again, I get why they do it, but I would have preferred everything to kind of be populated so that you can stumble across something on your own. It takes that kind of sense of discovery, because the first 30 minutes of me walking through this open world was like, okay, this cave definitely got to have something, and there's nothing there.
Yeah, that's that to me.
Or
like,
this beachfront, got to be something here, nothing there. And then once I hit the Ubisoft tower and talk to an NPC, suddenly there's
populate.
there's a
really
monster
odd.
on the beach.
I mean, I would agree in saying like, cool, like, there's a specific, obviously, reason as to why they want you to necessarily do that. But the problem with that is that if you're going to, really go and, whether they want to say this is open world or not, if they give you the ability to free explore and roam, and then they don't fill it with stuff unless you, hit the trigger to do that, like, you're gonna it's gonna feel very weird. Like, it's gonna feel very archaic.
It felt real odd like I said, for that first 30 minutes that I was in the open world trying to find something to do until I was like, okay, there's nothing here. I'm hoping pushing the story will fill this map out, and luckily it did.
Yeah. Um, so I have the other question I have for you is, this is being compared, obviously, to Remake, and well, I mean, Integrad is obviously just Remake with the extra DLC, but is there, the changes that were made? I mean, is it kind of feel seamless? Like if you you know jumped into Remake and then jumped into this, you're not going to kind of feel lost, or if you haven't played
No,
Remake.
no, there's no shock, and they do introduce you pretty decently to the new mechanics. And there's a lot of new RPG mechanics to it. They added a party level system where your party gets access to unison attacks, similar to what you kind of had in Final Fantasy 15, where Noctis and his group would like do double attacks with each other, like they would team up on a single attack. This game has that as well, and as your party level increases, you get access to more and more skills within that system. So that's a new RPG aspect. They made it so that there's a crafting system in the game, and the crafting system is actually one of the better ones that I've seen. You take items that you find in the overworld and stuff like grasses, plants, rocks, stuff like that. And you get a transmutation machine, and it basically just gives you a list of items you can craft, and you just transmute it right then and there. Super, super simplistic, not overly complicated, but it's all items that you're going to be consistently using and can farm up if you so choose.
How do they
Um,
how do they handle with like, because you said this is a middle, right? Like this is the middle part. So
yeah.
how do they handle, you know, what you did in the first one to, like, does it move over? Is there any kind of
No.
connection? Like, is this
Um,
something I could just jump into Rebirth and say, fuck, I don't give a hell about
you
Remake?
can. You can. It has the little, like, there's about a 5 minute recap movie that you can watch if you haven't played Remake or just need a refresher on it. So this is definitely something you could jump into if you really wanted to. I wouldn't recommend it because a ton of good stuff happens in Remake that you kind of need, but it does a decent enough job filling you in so that it's not a requirement. Um, as far as like the equipment and the abilities that you had in Remake, that's a little bit disappointing too. They do the whole sequel nerf the main character type thing where they don't like give a canon event that like nerfs your characters, but they just show up in this game with less stuff than they had
What
at the
the
end of
fuck?
Remake.
It's like
So
something. It's not a system where it's like, oh, he went to sleep and then he wakes up a few months later and now he's weaker than when he went to sleep before. Like,
yeah, it's odd. I don't even know if they did a lore reason, but yeah, they don't have access to all the weapons they had in Remake. They all don't
what the
definitely don't
fuck?
have access to all the materia. They have select things like select abilities, select weapons and stuff, but it's definitely a nerfed version of the main cast. And I don't know if the events at the end of Remake are what nerfed them. They never specifically explain that, but
That seems like a huge missed
it is
opportunity.
what
See,
it is. What it is.
that's the only problem with pulling apart like a full franchise into like separate little instances as well. Is like
Yeah.
it just feels weird.
Yeah, because for Remake, they had to get, since it's its own game, they had to get the characters to an end game
Yeah.
feel. And then with this game, they had to bring them back down to a starter feel to build them up to an end game feel again. And then 3 is going to do the exact same thing. So,
Why? I don't understand. Like, for
because
It doesn't.
it would feature bloat the characters too much. The way that I see it, and this might just be me coping with it because I'm perfectly okay with it. I knew this was coming. I knew there's not going to be a way for them to integrate everything from Remake into this. I would rather them do this and introduce new moves or reintroduce old moves than have like 3 moves that do the same thing. Like, oh, you have 3 moves that are pressure moves or 3 moves that are execute moves, that just basically fill the same function. Um,
I mean, don't you
this
think they?
way, they can kind of reintroduce those mechanics to you in a more polished and standout way.
I mean, don't you think? I mean, it's still a way of artificially doing it, but don't you think they could have just been like, hey, like, okay, we're gonna, if you have a save file, you're gonna bring your save file over. That character's gonna come over, but we're gonna make, again, if they have this dynamic level, like, hard system or difficulty, we're just gonna make the game like move up, right? So like, you're now facing harder. Like it's new stuff, it's new things, but you're facing all, it's just
They could
harder.
have done that with the weapons and the materia and stuff. The abilities are the only thing that kind of like throw a wrench in that. I don't know how they would introduce, because at the end of Remake, every character has 7 abilities. I don't know how they would go about stacking more abilities on top of that when those 7 abilities kind of filled every basic need you would have.
Is this one of those areas that you're talking about where it's just kind of like empty and there's
Yep,
nothing there?
I 100% expected there to be something here, and there is later once you get the side quest for it. But
That's so
no,
wild. For everybody
yeah,
that's listening, we're watching, and Bill is just basically running around this open beach, which again, in any
obviously
game,
looks like a boss arena.
any game today, you would see it and be like, oh yeah, there's definitely some stuff down there, and what and there is just a bunch of buoys that he is just kicking around.
Yeah,
for the most
Yeah.
part. Super weird.
yeah. But end of the day, I'm having a lot of fun with it. A lot of nitpicks on that front, and it all stems from that like new open world mechanic. I still think Final Fantasy 15 at this point has a better open world system than what 7 Rebirth does. That might be a hot take in itself, because I know a lot of people don't like 15. I do, and it plays better. There's a more fluid way of doing things. If I were to walk into an area outside of the hunts, there would be something there. But outside of those little nitpicks, the game controls beautifully. The fights are fun. The new mechanics are engaging. The story beats that I have went through so far have been well done. It's not felt too bloated as far as them trying to expand out story. It all feels very cohesive, and I'm excited to play more of it. We'll have some more talking points on this once I get closer to the end or finish it out.
How do you compare this to 16?
I don't know, man. 16 was an absolute treat to me. 16, I feel like, is a cinematic masterpiece, and while it might not have been as well received, and not as like deep of an RPG as what this is, because this is definitely more RPG than what 16 was. 16 has a special place in my heart. I genuinely think that should have been in Game of the Year category last year. So as of right now, this doesn't hold quite the same candle, but it very well could. It has the potential to. I just haven't played enough of it yet.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, it's Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I will say that I have watched quite a bit of gameplay footage of it, and though I am a staunch still like my Final Fantasies need to be fucking turn based. It is interest me more and more. Almost to the point of being like, should I go and fucking buy a PlayStation? Like, or is this something that I can just wait? And I know they're going to bring this to PC. They brought Integrad to PC. They brought Remake to PC, so this will come to PC.
Speaking of coming to PC, 16 is coming to PC. Hopefully by year's end is what UCP said.
I was about to say, I don't think they
yeah.
give a release date, but
Nah.
yeah, so they were in like the final.
They're in the final
of it.
stretches of it.
Yeah.
Getting it optimized.
The rumor is actually that it will be here June. Is the heavy base rumor that's going around. Is that June is the date that we could get 16.
Cool.
We'll see.
Yep. So, but yeah. So there you go. So that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, PlayStation only, correct? PS5 only.
As of right now, it'll probably come to PC within a couple of years.
Yeah. There you go. So
probably be an Epic exclusive when it does.
Yeah,
probably. Thank you for checking out the patch notes. If you enjoyed this small selection from our podcast, come and join us every Thursday at 10:30 p.m. Eastern for the full unfiltered pre-patch podcast. And check out our past shows on anchor.fm/prepatch podcast.